3% of Trump voters, 3% of Republicans basically, believe that Trump should step aside and let Biden take the presidency because he's legitimate. 3%. Everybody else is either on the fence, or the other 73% say that Trump should not concede because he is the legitimate winner. So 3% say that Trump should concede, he should step aside, Biden is the president now. Our political class, our Republican conservative political class, is nearly 100% drawn from that 3% of people. So the will of 3% is overriding the will of the 97% in this Republican Party right now. That is unacceptable and it's untenable. It's what we're seeing right now playing out in the streets every single day. Hundreds of thousands of people marching in D.C., in the Capitol. Thousands, tens of thousands marching everywhere else in the state capitol buildings throughout the rest of the country. People in Atlanta, Georgia, for recounts and for all of these other things. Everything, we're seeing it play out right now. The will of the American people, the will of the voter, the Republican voting base, the will of the Trump supporter is that the GOP back him because he's legitimate. Biden is illegitimate, and Trump should never concede because he has the mandate of the sovereign people. That's the will of the people, and we see that playing out in the streets. And we see this 3% playing out in the state legislatures and in the U.S. Congress, where people are saying Trump should step aside. It's time for, Senator John Cornyn says, it's time for Trump to realize that he lost and he should step aside. Other politicians everywhere else saying it's time to step aside. We have 3% represented in Congress. We have a majority in the Senate. We have nearly half of the House. We have 70 million Trump voters. And only 3% of them say that Trump should step aside. And those people are being represented by the entirety of the party, which is supposed to represent half of the population, supposed to represent the conservative half of the population. And they don't. They represent less than 3% of it. Less than 3% of it. This is why I say take notes about who is saying what right now, who is doing what, who is willing to support Trump, who's willing to support the people that voted for them and for Trump, who's willing to do that and who's willing to spit in their face and expect them to take it and just go with it. Oh, we'll go another time around. Let's have another go around on the humiliation train where the GOP spits in our faces. Let's, hey, what's one more time? What's two more times? What's, we'll just stay here forever. Who is doing what? Because we've shown that we can mobilize that 73%. We've shown that we can mobilize that 2/3 that say under no circumstances should Trump ever concede, ever. 2/3 of the people who say that Trump is totally legitimate, which is 75% almost of the Trump base. That is a political force which cannot be reckoned with. That cannot be stopped. That cannot be stopped. If we harness the will, the energy rather, of those people in order to execute their will, we cannot be stopped because we've seen this past 4 years that people want results and they respond to results. The reason for a low Republican turnout isn't because there's no Republican voters. It's because they couldn't be bothered to give a damn about somebody who's going to ignore them for another 4 to 8 years. They don't care. They don't care when somebody's just going to lie to them, piss down their back and tell them it's raining and just, hey, take this. You have to take it because there's no other option. They can't be bothered to get out and vote for that. But then you get somebody like Trump who understands them and responds to them and delivers for them. And then suddenly you have the highest turnout for any presidential candidate in history. And I say that not accepting Joe Biden because of the rampant fraud. Joe Biden lost. And I believe that he lost so significantly that it would be unbelievable.